Exercise 17C. We're required to find the next two terms and then the nth term in each of the linear sequences. Okay, so 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. The next two terms, we are adding 2. Clearly adding 2 to every single term. So the next term will be 13 and the term after that will be 15. That answers the first part of the question. The second part of the question is to determine the nth term. So to determine the nth term, the first thing we're going to do is write down the nth term, which is Tn. Okay, then equals the common difference. For a sequence, we need 3 terms. We don't need any more. We just need 3 terms to get a common difference between successive terms. That common difference is 2. So we put that difference down and multiply it by n. This is how we are going to find the nth term of a linear sequence. We can write down the common difference multiplied by n. Then, when n equals 1, we need to get the first term, which is 3. So, as it's written here, when n equals 1, 2 times 1 is 2. Now, we need to have 3 as our first term. So, what do we do to 2 to make it 3? We're going to add 1. Now, we're going to test that this works for all the terms. When n equals 2, then Tn will be 2 times 2 plus 1. 4 plus 1 equals 5. We get 5, which is good. It confirms Tn. So when n equals 3, Tn will be 2 times 3 plus 1. 6 plus 1 equals 7. And it confirms that term as well. So we've confirmed the first 3 terms of the sequence. That means that this is the general term of the sequence. And you can test it. Put in, this is when n equals 4, n equals 5, n equals 6, n equals 7. Test it by putting in n equals 4, 5, 6, and 7, and make sure that you get the terms 9, 11, 13, and 15. A, B, 5, 9, 13, 17, 21. The next two terms, we are clearly adding 4 to every single term. So 21 plus 4 is 25. 25 plus 4 is 29. So those are the next two terms in the sequence. To find the general term, we write down Tn equals, we take the common difference, which is 4, and multiply it by n. Now, when n equals 1, we need to get 5. So n equals 1, 4 times 1 is 4. We have to add 1 to 4 to get 5. So this is your general term. And now I want you to check that it applies for every other term. When n equals 2, we should get 9. When n equals 2, 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. When n equals 3, we should get 13. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. When n equals 4, we should get 17. 4 times 4 is 16 plus 1 is 17. So therefore, this is the general term for this sequence. Okay, C, 8, 13, 18, 23, 28. We are clearly adding 5 to every term here. So the next term will be 28 plus 5 is 33, and then the next term will be 33 plus 5 is 38. So those are the next two terms of the sequence. Tn will be, we write down the difference between successive terms, which is 5, multiply by n. Then when n equals 1, we need to get 8. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 will give us 8. And this is how we're going to get the general term for a sequence. Now let's check. When n equals 2, we should get 13. So 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 3 is 13. Correct. When n equals 3, the third term, we should get 18. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 3 is 18. So when the first 3 terms check out, then we've got the correct nth term. Okay, E, 2, 8, 14, 20, 26. We are adding 6 to every term. So 26 plus 6 is 32, and then 32 plus 6 is 38. So these are the next two terms of the sequence. Now the nth term, we take the difference, which is 6, and we multiply it by n. When n equals 1, we need to have a first term of 2. 6 times 1 is 6. But we need to have 2 as our first term, so we need to subtract 4 to get 2. So this is our nth term. Now let's check. When n equals 2, we have to have the second term being 8. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 minus 4 is 8, so that checks out. When n equals 3, the third term must be 14. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 minus 4 is 14. So we've got the first three terms, therefore this is the correct nth term of that sequence. 5, 8, 11, 14, 17. We are adding 3 to every term. So 17 plus 3 gives us 20, and then 20 plus 3 gives us 23. So those are the next two terms. The nth term, look at the common difference, which is 3, and multiply by n. Then when n equals 1, we need to have the first term being 5. 3 times 1 is 3, so we have to add 2 to that to get 5. Now we're going to check the next two terms. When n equals 2, we need to have the second term being 8. So 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 is 8. When n equals 3, the third term must be 11. So 3 times 3 is 9, 9 plus 2 is 11. So the first three terms are check out. Therefore, this is your nth term for the sequence. Okay, we are adding 7 to each term. So the next two terms will be 37 and 44. The nth term, we are going to look at the common difference, which is 7, and multiply it by n. When n equals 1, we have to have the first term being 2. When n equals 1, 7 times 1 is 7. So we need to subtract 5 from 7 to get 2. And this is our general term. Now we're going to check it. When n equals 2, the second term must be 9. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 minus 5 is 9. That checks out. When n equals 3, the third term must be 16. 7 times 3 is 21. 21 minus 5 is 16. So the first three terms check out. Therefore, the nth term is correct. I'm going to leave the rest of the exercise, G through to L, for you to do. Question 2 is very similar. We need to find the nth term and then find the 50th term. We can only find the 50th term once we found the nth term. So I'm just going to do the first one, then you can do the rest. So the common difference is plus 3. We add 3 to each term. So the nth term will be the common difference times n. When n equals 1, we have to have the first term being 4. When n equals 1, 3 times 1 is 3. We have to add 1 to get 4. And now we're going to check the sequence. When n equals 2, the second term must be 7. So 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. When n equals 3, we must get the third term being 10. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10. So the first two terms check out. This is the nth term. Now, the only difference between this exercise and the previous one is we need to find the 50th term. We just need to find the value of T50. So we just put n equals 50 into the Tn formula. So 3 times 50 plus 1, that's 150 plus 1. T50 is 151. I'll do one more and then you're going to do the rest of the exercise. 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. We are clearly adding 2 to every term. So Tn is 2 times n. When n equals 1, we need to get the first term being 7. So when n equals 1, 2 times 1 is 2. We have to add 5 to get 7 for the first term. So that is your nth term. Now we're going to check. When n equals 2, the second term has to be 9. So when n equals 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 plus 5 is 9, that checks out. When n equals 3, the third term must be 11. So 2 times 3 is 6, 6 plus 5 is 11. So therefore, because the first three terms check out, this is the nth term for this sequence. Now we need the 50th term. So to work out the 50th term, n is 50, so the 50th term is 2 times 50 plus 5. That's going to be 100 plus 5. The 50th term is 105. And this is what you're going to do for the remainder of the exercise. Okay, question 3, very similar to question 2. First, find the nth term. The only difference here is we're finding the 100th term. So n equals 100. So I'll leave that for you to do as well. Number 4, an online CD retail company uses this price chart. The company charges a standard basic price for a single CD, including postage and packaging. Use the charges for 1 to 5 CDs, work out an expression for the nth term. So the charges for 1 to 5 CDs, we're looking at this sequence of numbers. So 10, 18, 26, 34, 42. Work out an expression for the nth term. So for this sequence of numbers, we are adding 8 to each term. So the nth term equals 8n. When n equals 1, we need to have the first term being 10. 8 times 1 is 8. We add 2 to 8 to get 10. So this is the nth term. Before we continue, we're going to check. When n equals 2, the second term must be 18. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 2 is 18. When n equals 3, the third term must be 26. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 plus 2 is 26. So this is the nth term. B, using the charges for 6 to 10 CDs, do the same thing. Okay. So for 6 to 10, okay, so the sequence we now have is 49, 57, 65, 73, 81. So we are adding 8 to each term here. The nth term will be 8 times n. When n equals 1, we need to have the first term being 49. So 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 41 will give us 49. Now we're going to check that this works for the next two terms. When n equals 2, the second term must be 57. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 41 is 57. So that checks out. When n equals 3, the third term must be 65. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 plus 41 is 65. So the first two terms check out. This is the correct nth term for that sequence. So the sequence is 88, 96, 104, 112, 120. So we are adding 8 to each term. So the nth term, Tn, will be 8 times n. When n equals 1, the first term must be 88. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 80 is 88. Now we're going to check the next two terms. When n equals 2, the second term must be 96. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 80 is 96. That checks out. When n equals 3, the third term must be 104. 8 times 3 is 24. 24 plus 80 is 104. So the first two terms check out. This is the nth term for that sequence. Okay, the company charges a standard basic price for the single CD. Now, the basic charge for the CD will be 8 times the number of CDs. Okay, question 5. We are given quadratic sequences. Now, when it comes to quadratic and cubic sequences, let's just start with quadratic sequences. As soon as we recognize that a sequence is not linear, in other words, there isn't a common difference between successive terms, then we see if there's a common second difference. If there's a common second difference, it's a quadratic sequence. So with a quadratic sequence, we are going to compare every quadratic sequence we come across with the square number sequence. So the square number sequence is in fact 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. These are the first 5 terms of the sequence, right? The first term is 1, the second term is 4, the third term is 9. So the first term is 1 squared, the second term is 2 squared, the third term is 3 squared, the fourth term is 4 squared, the fifth term is 5 squared. So if we look at term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, term 5, we've got 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared. So as we continue the sequence, we're going to get up to the nth term. So the nth term, term n, will be n squared, because the sequence starts 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, in line with term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, term 5. So the nth term for this sequence is Tn equals n squared. When it comes to sequence B, 3, 6, 11, 18, 27. Okay, let's just first do the first difference. So first we add 3, then we add 5, then we add 7, and then we add 9. Now 3, 5, 7, 9 is not a linear sequence, because this is the first difference and it's not the same. Okay, so we have to do the second difference. So 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 2 is 7, 7 plus 2 is 9. Now the second difference, we have a common second difference, right? So this is a quadratic sequence. Okay, now we're going to compare this sequence, 3, 6, 11, 18, 27, to the square numbers 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. So we're comparing this to this sequence. The nth term for the second sequence is the square number. So Tn equals, we now need to compare the second sequence with the first sequence. The first sequence is a sequence of the square natural numbers. So the general term for the first sequence, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, the square numbers, is n squared. Tn equals n squared. Now every term in the sequence, we are adding 2 to get the corresponding term in the second sequence. So 1 plus 2 is 3, 4 plus 2 is 6, 9 plus 2 is 11, 16 plus 2 is 18, 25 plus 2 is 27. So we're taking the general term of the first sequence and we are adding 2 to get the general term of the second sequence. So the general term of the second sequence is Tn equals n squared plus 2. Okay, C, 2, 8, 18, 32, 50. Now, we're first going to check that it is a quadratic sequence. We can't just look at a sequence and just guess. We need to make sure and know that it's a quadratic sequence. So the first thing we do is find the first difference. First it's plus 6, then it's plus 10, then it's plus 14, and then it's plus 18. This is the first difference, which is not the same because it's different every single time. We do the second difference now. We have plus 4 between each term. We have a common second difference. So this confirms that we are dealing with a quadratic sequence. So the sequence 2, 8, 18, 32, and 50 is compared with the square number sequence 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. The nth term for this sequence, the square number sequence, is Tn equals n squared. So now we're just comparing the two. So comparing the first sequence, which is the sequence of square numbers, we compare it to the second sequence 2, 8, 18, 32, 50. Every term in the square number sequence is multiplied by 2 to get the corresponding term in the second sequence. So term 1 in the first sequence times 2 is 2, 4 times 2 is 8, 9 times 2 is 18, 16 times 2 is 32, 25 times 2 is 50. So we take the term n and we just double the general term. So Tn will be 2n squared. So this is the general term for the second sequence. Question 6. Similarly, with cubic sequences, we are going to compare each sequence to the sequence of cube numbers. So the sequence of cube numbers is actually the first sequence we've got here. Remember that this is term 1, and that's term 2, term 3, term 4. First term 1 is 1 cubed, 8 is 2 cubed, 27 is 3 cubed, 64 is 4 cubed. So if we look at the number of the terms, term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the nth term of this sequence is going to be Tn equals n cubed. This is the sequence of cubed numbers. The second sequence, 11, 18, 37, 74. We're now going to first check what kind of sequence it is, right? If the question said it's not a cubic sequence, you'd have to determine what kind of sequence it is. Is it linear? Yes or no. Is it quadratic? Yes or no. Is it cubic? Yes or no. So the first thing we do is we find the first difference, which is plus 7. Then next, after that, the next two terms is going to be plus 19 and then plus 37. 7, 19, 37 is clearly not a linear sequence. Now we do the second difference. The second difference will be plus 12 and then plus 18. The second difference is clearly also not common, right? There isn't a common second difference, 12, 18. Now we do the next difference and we get plus 6. Now we don't have enough terms to show that it's cubic, but they told us that it's cubic. Okay, but this is what you would do if the exam question doesn't specify what kind of a sequence it is. You need to find out what sequence it is. So you need enough terms to get a common difference of 6 for it to be cubic. They told us that it's cubic, so we don't have to do this. But I'm just showing you this is what you would have to do to determine if it is cubic. You'd have to write down the first difference, the second difference. If you get a common third difference, then the sequence is cubic. 0.5 for 13.5, 32. Now, they tell us that it's a cubic sequence, so we don't have to do anything other than compare it to the cubic sequence. 1, 8, 27, 64. So the nth term is n cubed for the sequence here. We now need to compare our sequence to the cube sequence of natural numbers. So a half to 1, 4 to 8, 13 and a half to 27, 32 to 64. Clearly we can see that if we multiply every term of the second sequence by 2, we're going to get the cube sequence. In other words, we take the cube sequence and divide by 2 to get the second sequence. So the nth term of this sequence, 0.54, 13 and a half, 32, will be half of the cubic sequence. So it's going to be a half n cubed. And now we're going to check that this is correct. When n equals 1, we need to get a half, 0.5. 1 cubed is 1. 1 times a half is a half, so that checks out. When n equals 2, we need a second term of 4. 2 cubed is 8. A half of 8 is 4. When n equals 3, we need to get a third term of 13 and a half. N cubed is 3 cubed is 27. Half of 27 is 13 and a half. So that checks out. I'm going to leave D for you to do. Now, question 7, I'm going to leave as an exercise for you to do. All it says is work out the nth term of each of these sequences. It doesn't say anything about it being linear, quadratic, or cubic. You need to determine which of those sequences you are dealing with. So you're going to start with the first difference. If you have a common first difference, it's a linear sequence. If you don't have a common first difference, you check if there's a common second difference. If there's a common second difference, it's a quadratic sequence. If there isn't a common second difference, you check for a common third difference. If there's a common third difference, it's a cubic sequence. And then you can work out the nth term according to how we have done the previous questions.